we're going to have a look at finding the area of rectangles. That's quite a simple formula that you do need to remember. So the area of a rectangle, I'm being specific, that is rectangles we're looking at, because other shapes have got other formulas. So area of a rectangle, we're going to do base times height. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, the base of your shape is usually the bottom line. So on question 1, I'm highlighting that in green. And the height has to be at 90 degrees to the base. So generally, a height is the direction that's going upwards. So the green and the pink line are generally what you see as base and height. Now, shapes can be rotated, so they might not always be orientated in these directions. So the really important thing is that whatever you're calling your base and the height have to be at a right angle to each other. So it's highlighting in purple on the diagram. The base and height are indeed at a right angle. So no matter how they're rotated, that's going to work. So again, looking at question 1, we're going to do base multiplied by the height. So the base, there's no measurement on it, but it is parallel to the top, which is 100 centimeters. And we know it's a rectangle because they're right angles. So the base is going to be 100 centimeters. The height is 60. So we're going to do 100 multiplied by 60. Now, we only have 2 numbers to multiply, the 1 and the 6, because of course multiplying anything by 0 gives you 0. So 1 times 6 is 6. It's just a matter of how many zeros. Well, we've got 3 in the question, so we're going to have 3 in the answer. And then this is in centimetres. Because it's multiplication, it's going to be centimetres squared. Now, the reason for this is that we're doing centimetres multiplied by centimetres, which means we've multiplied centimetres by itself, which gives you centimetres squared. It's the same concept as in algebra, where if you do x times x, you can call that x squared because you've multiplied it by itself. So that's the answer to question 1, 6,000 centimetres squared. Now looking at question 2. So our first job is to identify the base and height. So we can see we've got the 8 metres, and we've got 13 metres, and they are at right angles to each other, which is the main criteria for a base and a height. Now, yes, it might have made more sense if I highlighted the line at the bottom for the base. You might always think, well, the base is at the bottom. Again, the key thing is they have to be at right angles. So we have 8, we have 13, so we need to multiply them together to get our answer. So 3 times 8 is 24, carry the 2. And 1 times 8 is 8, plus the 2 we carried is 10. So that gives us 104 metres squared. Now looking at question 3, so again, we're looking for 2 measurements at right angles. We've got the 12 metres and we have got the 5 metres, so we're going to multiply those together. So that's going to be 12 multiplied by 5. Now 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. And then 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 we carried is 6, which gives us 60. And our units are in metres, so it'll be metres squared, because we multiplied 2 different sets of metres together. Now looking at question 4. So we can see we've got the 70 centimetres, but there aren't any other units, numbers labelled anywhere. So what do we do? Well, look at this, it's a square, because we've got the little dashes on the 70, and that means that it's the same length as every other side with a dash. So the side I'm now highlighting in pink, that will also be 70 centimetres because of the dash. And then we've got the right angles labelled, so we know we've got a base and a height. So we're going to do 70 times 70. We've only got 2 numbers to multiply, so 7 times 7 is 49. And we've got 2 zeros in the question, so we'll have 2 zeros in the answer. And with the units, that will be centimetres squared. Now looking at the final question. Now again, this is a square. We only have one side labelled with the dashes showing that all sides are the same length. So we're going to have a height that is going to be the same distance, 130 centimetres. So we're going to do 130 multiplied by itself, 130. Now you might have memorised that 13 multiplied by 13 is 169. And we've got 2 zeros in the question. So our units are in centimetres, so it's centimetres squared. So I've not done the full working out for this, but because 13 is being squared, you should be memorising your square numbers, so we should be able to find the answer that way. Alternatively, you could use a calculator, or you could use a full column method. Now, the medium questions are going to work the same way, we just have more complicated numbers, and we're going to try and do these using a non-calculator method. We will occasionally be asked to do these with a calculator. So we've got our base, 75.9, and we've got our height, 134.1. And again, we know these can be a base and height because they are at right angles to each other. So we're going to multiply 134.1 by 75.9. Now, this question will be a little bit large to be a non-calculator question. It is possible. You could spend, 5 minutes doing this without a calculator and get maybe 4 or 5 marks for your multiplication and the area altogether. But I'm not going to waste your time with that. You can go and watch the multiplying without a calculator video. So I'm just going to use a calculator for this. So 134.1 multiplied by 75.9 is going to give us 10178.19. And then the question is in centimetres. So it'll be centimetres squared. Now let's move on to question 2. So we need to identify the base and the height, and they have to be separated by a right angle. So we're going to do 75.4 multiplied by 117.5. Again, I'll be using a calculator for these questions. So I'm going to type that in, 75.4 times 117.5. And the answer that I'm getting is 8,859.5. And the units we're working again in centimetres. So centimetres squared. Looking at question 3 next. So we've got our base, 63.3. We've got our height, 76.1. And we're going to multiply those together. I'm going to type that into a calculator. So 76.1 multiplied by 63.3. And that's going to give us an answer, which is 4,817.13. And again, we're working in centimetres. And that'll be squared. Now looking at question 4. Now we've got a base number here, we've got the 7.6, we don't have a height, but we've got the little dashes, that means that every single side is the same length, so we know the height is going to be the same length as the width. So this question is going to be 7.6 multiplied by 7.6, write that on a calculator, and that's going to give us 57.76, and now working in meters. So we've multiplied 2 lots of meters together, so it's been multiplied by itself, so it's meters squared. Then for the final question, again we can see with the base it's going to be 10.9, or at least the top will be parallel to the base, it'll be the same number. We see the dashes, so all the sides will be the same length. This is a square, so the height will also be 10.9. So we're going to do 10.9 multiplied by 10.9. So type those into a calculator. And that's going to give us an answer of 118.81. There were the units. Again, this is going to be a meters squared question. So for all the easy and medium questions, for the area of a rectangle, and squares count as a type of rectangle, we'll do the base times the height. And realistically, with shapes being rotated around, we just need two measurements which are at a right angle to each other. Simpler numbers will be non-calculated questions. Then more complicated numbers, like the median questions, will either be worth a lot more marks if they are calculated questions and non-calculated questions, or if they are calculated questions, then they'll be worth less marks. Now, with the hard questions, we can see we've got a base for question 1, we've got the 70 centimetres, but then for the height, it's just labelled with an algebra letter. So the whole point of these questions is to figure out what the height of the shapes are. We do have another clue. We've actually been given the answer to the area. The area is 6,300 centimetres. So if you've got the answer in maths, this will be a backwards question, working backwards to part of the question, the height. So you're going to do the opposite operation. So if you're normally multiplying, we are going to be dividing. So we're going to take the 6,300 with the opposite operation to what we normally do, which is multiplication. So we're going to be doing a division. We're going to be dividing by the other clue we've been given, which was the 70 centimetres. And if we do that division, our answer is going to be the height. So 6,300 divided by 70 on a calculator gives us 90. The units are in centimetres, and that is the same as the height. Moving on to question 2. Now, again, we do have the base number, 11 metres. We don't have the height, and it's labelled with a letter. So we need to try and figure out what the height is. We have been given the answer to the area, which is 66 metres squared. So we take the answer. If we're working backwards instead of multiplying, we'll be doing the opposite of that, which is dividing. We'll be dividing by the one clue it's given us, which is the 11 metres. So 66 divided by 11 is 6. Our units are in metres, and that again is the same as the height, h. For question 3, it's a little bit different. We have been given the height this time, which is 8 metres, but we haven't been given the width or the base, which is labelled with a W. So we need to try and find that. Now again, we're given the answer, we're given the area, so we need to work backwards. So we've got 64 metres squared. Do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. And the height, the clue it's given us is 8. So if we did 64 divided by 8, that is going to give us 8. Our units are metres, and that is the same as the base, or alternatively you could call it the width. And with that shape, you'll notice the base and the height are the same length. So even though it's not labelled, this shape is actually a square. So we could go a little bit further and we could label the little dashes to show that all 4 sides are the same length. It is a square. Moving on to question 4. Again, we've got the height. We don't have the width or the base. But we do have the answer to the area, 63 metres squared. So we're going to work backwards. So it's 63 divided by 7. And that will give us 9. The units are in metres. And again, that is the width of the shape. Another word for the base. Now looking at question 5, now we don't have any clues at all here, we've got no measurements. And one of the sides has been labelled S, which on this diagram would be the base. But we've also got that all the sides are equal because of the little dashes, so the height would also be the same as the base. but we've got no clues. Now, we've been told the area is 49 centimetres squared, so we can write that down. But there's nothing we can divide it by. Now, to get this, because this is a square shape, we do the opposite of squaring. And the opposite of squaring is finding the square root. So we're going to find the square root of 49. That is equal to 7, because 7 times 7 is 49. And our units, we're working in centimetres. And that is the same as the length of one of the sides, or S. So if you're given the answer to the question, the area, you'll be asked for a part of the question, either the base or the height, and you can work backwards by doing the opposite operation. The opposite of multiplication is division. If instead you have a square, so you have no clues, the opposite of squaring is square rooting, and that will get you to your answer. We can test it, so now we know our side is 7 centimetres. Then the base times height will be 7 times 7, which would get us back to 49, so we know we've got the right answer.
Ouch! This is why in some videos I have unexplained scratches.